Everyone loves Meemaw. I did too. Until I noticed something I could not stop seeing after that. She is always standing closest to the exit. In every room, in every relationship, in every moment, the Cooper family needed someone to stay. Connie Tucker loved this family deeply. And that love had a cost nobody ever added up. Until now. Today, we are going deeper into Connie Tucker than any video has gone. Not to prosecute her. She is not a villain. And this is not about the gambling or the arrests or the ankle monitor, though we are going to get there. This is about something underneath all of that. I want to ask one question and follow it all the way down. What if the person who loved Sheldon Cooper the most was also the person whose love cost the people around her the most? I am going to show you the evidence. I am going to show you the pattern. And I want you to notice something early that is going to mean something completely different by the time we reach the end. She is always standing closest to the exit. Remember that. Let's get into it. Here is the version of Connie Tucker that Young Sheldon sells you. Sharp tongue, no filter, beer in hand. She says what Mary won't say. She does what George can't do. She is the pressure valve. The person who walks into a tense room and somehow makes everyone breathe again. And she is genuinely funny. Annie Potts plays her with so much warmth and timing that you root for her unconditionally from episode 1. I rooted for her. Most people still do. But I went back and watched all 7 seasons, paying attention not to what Meemaw says, but to what she does the moment things get hard. And a pattern emerged that I genuinely did not expect to find. Meemaw does not leave, she does not stay, she circles. She moves toward the family when they need her, in ways she is good at, and she moves away, quietly, smoothly, with barely a ripple, the moment the cost of staying rises above what she is willing to pay. She does it so naturally that almost nobody in the Cooper family ever calls her on it. Almost. Start here, because this is the foundation. Meemaw has a favorite grandchild. She does not hide it. It is Sheldon. It has always been Sheldon. And that love is real. It is one of the most genuine relationships in this entire show, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. But notice something. Every time Meemaw enters a room where Sheldon is struggling, she stays. She figures it out. She finds the language that reaches him when everyone else has given up. Now watch what happens in the rooms where Georgie is struggling. Or Missy. Me. Georgie grows up understanding, without anyone telling him directly that he is not the one Meemaw stays up for. He is not the one she drops everything to answer. And because Georgie has the emotional intelligence to feel all of this without quite having the vocabulary to name it, what it produces in him is not anger. It is a quiet acceptance that his worth in this family will always be measured against someone else. Missy is sitting right there at the dinner table, right there in the living room. And she becomes invisible the moment Sheldon enters the conversation. You might say, well, Sheldon needed more. He was a genius in a world that could not hold him. He required more support. And that is true. But it does not answer what Georgie and Missy were supposed to do with the gap that created. In Big Bang Theory, Georgie Cooper is described as having essentially raised himself. Where was the cool grandmother? She was always standing closest to the exit. Now, the gambling. Most people look at Meemaw's illegal casino operation as a lovable quirk. Classic Meemaw. Wild grandma energy. The show frames it that way. The laugh track agrees. But I want you to look at it from a different angle. Meemaw builds an illegal operation out of her garage, runs it for years, brings in her teenage grandson Georgie as an employee, launders money through a laundromat, bribes a police officer, smuggles contraband cigarettes across the Mexican border with Georgie in the car, gets raided by a SWAT team, gets arrested, gets an ankle monitor and community service. And then the moment the heat dies down, she starts again. I was researching this and I kept waiting for the moment where she stopped, where she looked at what this was doing to the people around her and made a different choice. That moment never came. But here is what took me longest to see. The gambling was never really about the money. Meemaw is not desperate. She is not poor. She does not run an illegal casino because she has no other options. Notice something about every major decision Meemaw makes across 7 seasons. The casino. She runs the house, she sets the terms. Nobody has the advantage over her. Her relationships. She keeps one foot out of every door. Nobody gets to need her more than she is willing to give. Her family. She shows up on her own schedule. She leaves on her own terms. Whether that is conscious or not, it is genuinely difficult to ignore once you see it laid out like this. Meemaw always needs to be the house. There is a scene early in the series where Mary is spiraling, and George cannot reach her, and Pastor Jeff cannot reach her. Meemaw walks in, says one blunt sentence, and Mary stops, just stops. Nobody else in that family had that ability. Not George, who loved her, not Pastor Jeff, who counseled her, only Meemaw. Because Meemaw was the one person Mary could not perform for. That dynamic runs across all 7 seasons. It is the clearest evidence we have that these two women needed each other in ways neither of them ever quite managed to say out loud, which makes what comes later even harder to sit with. Let's talk about Dale Ballard. Dale loves Meemaw, genuinely, consistently. He is patient with her. He makes her laugh. He is, by most measures, a decent man who wants one thing: to stop being kept at arm's length by a woman he adores. And she keeps him there, for seasons, getting closer, pulling back, closer, pulling back. Then he proposes. She says no. And I want to be clear, she loves him. The show makes that obvious. This is not about a lack of feeling. This is about a door Meemaw decided to keep closed a long time ago. I kept thinking about when that door closed, and I think it closed when she lost her husband. She was widowed young. She raised Mary largely alone, and somewhere in that period she made a decision, maybe not even consciously, that she was never again going to need someone so completely that losing them could take her apart. So she keeps one foot out of every room she enters. With Dale, with Mary, with the Cooper children, even with Sheldon, the closest she comes to fully committing, she maintains a version of herself that is separate, unbeholden, ready. The exit is always unlocked. Dale did not deserve that. Mary did not deserve that. The Cooper children deserved a grandmother who was fully in the room, not one who was always, quietly, managing her departure. And here I want to pause for a second, because I am aware of how this sounds. Maybe I am being unfair to her. Maybe Meemaw simply understood something the rest of us do not want to accept, that people have to save themselves, that a grandmother's job is not to sacrifice her own life every time the family hits a wall. I genuinely considered that. I thought about it for a long time, and then I looked at what happened after George died, and I could not hold that argument anymore. Because what happened after George died was not Meemaw making a reasonable choice about her own life. It was Meemaw doing the one thing she had always done when the cost of staying got too high. She found the exit. George Cooper dies. He says, "See y'all later" on a May morning, and then he is gone. No warning, no goodbye, no final conversation. Just the door. And then nothing. Mary stays. Missy stays. Georgie stays. Sheldon leaves for California. Meemaw moves in with Dale. Not into the Cooper house. Not to help raise Missy, who is 14 and falling apart. Not to support Georgie, who is 17 and suddenly the only man standing in a house full of people who need him. She moves in with her boyfriend. Mary, already being pulled towards something harder and more rigid by grief, now had nobody to push back. Nobody who knew her well enough and loved her fiercely enough to say, "You are going too far." Meemaw was the only person in Mary's life with the history, the authority, and the love to do that. And she left. Georgie, who Big Bang Theory describes as having basically raised himself, did exactly that. He raised himself. This is the moment I think defines Connie Tucker more than any gambling raid or casino scene, or arrest, or ankle monitor. This is the moment where her pattern became a choice, with consequences that lasted decades. She circled away, when the cost of staying was highest. There is a scene late in Young Sheldon. Meemaw and Mary are in the kitchen together. Mary is exhausted, grieving, running on faith and stubbornness and not much else. And Meemaw says something warm, something funny, and Mary laughs. And for one moment you see exactly who these two women could have been to each other, if Meemaw had stayed. There is a line Meemaw says to Mary in one of their arguments that I think is the truest thing she speaks in the entire show. "I love you, Mary, but I have never been able to figure out how to be your mother." That line is everything. Not "I do not love you," not "I do not care." I love you, but I never figured out how. That is Meemaw's wound in a single sentence. A woman with enormous capacity for love and almost no ability to sustain the kind of love that requires her to stay when staying is hard. The kind that says, "I am here, even when it costs me something." She loved Sheldon because loving Sheldon was uncomplicated in a specific way. He needed things from her. She was genuinely good at giving: entertainment, permission to be strange, irreverence in a house full of rules. She could show up for that version of love. Mary needed something different. She needed a mother who stayed. And that was the one thing Meemaw could never quite be. And the tragedy is not that Meemaw was a bad person. The tragedy is that she knew it. That line is not an excuse. It is a confession. She knew what she could not give. She just never found a way to close the distance anyway. Here is what I think the Meemaw story is actually about. It is not about gambling. It is not about criminal charges or ankle monitors or a laundromat that probably should not exist. It is about a specific kind of wound that does not look like a wound from the outside. Meemaw lost someone she needed, early, before she had finished becoming whoever she was going to be. And instead of grieving in a way that kept her open, she closed a door. The door that says, "I will need you. I will be vulnerable with you. I will stay even when leaving feels safer." And once that door closed, everything she built, the independence, the charm, the gambling empire, the 1 foot always near the exit, was built around never having to open it again. There is a type of person most of us know, or maybe we are that person, who loves generously, but protects themselves so completely that the people they love most can feel the protection more than they can feel the love. Present and absent at the same time, warm and unreachable at the same time, devoted and self-preserving at the same time. That is what Meemaw looks like across 7 seasons, if you pay attention to the right things. And young Sheldon spent those 7 seasons making her so funny, so charming, so endlessly watchable, that most of us never noticed what was missing. Her deepest wound was not the gambling, or the failed proposals, or the complicated motherhood. It was simpler than all of that. She never learned how to stay. And because she never learned how to stay, the people who needed her most spent years quietly learning how to need her less. Which is its own kind of tragedy. Because a woman who is loved less, even when she chose it, is still a woman who is loved less. In the final season of Young Sheldon, Meemaw is still there. Still funny. Still sharp. Still running something that probably should not be legal. And Sheldon still loves her. Completely. Without reservation. Which tells you something important. Her love for him was real. It worked. On him it worked. But think about everyone who was not Sheldon. Think about Georgie at 17, holding a collapsed house together with no father, no grandmother, and no net beneath him. Think about Missy at 14, invisible in a family too consumed by grief to see her clearly. Think about Mary, alone in that house in Medford, with nobody left who knew how to tell her the truth. Think about Dale, who spent years loving a woman who was always, quietly, managing her own exit. Remember what I said at the very beginning of this video. She is always standing closest to the exit. George dies. She leaves again. That is not a coincidence. That is not one hard moment in an otherwise present life. That is a pattern that ran the length of this woman's entire story. And here is the question I cannot answer, the one I want you to answer below. Do you think Meemaw ever truly understood the cost? Not the legal cost, the human cost. The cost to the people who needed more from her than she was willing to give. Or do you think she went to her grave believing she had done the best she could? And that the best she could was enough? Because those are 2 very different endings to the same story. And I genuinely cannot decide which one is true. Tell me below. I read every single one. If this investigation changed how you see Meemaw, I want you to know that the video before this one on this channel looks at George Cooper Sr. with the same depth. And once you have watched both, The connection between what George needed and what Meemaw failed to give Mary after he died hits completely differently. Go find it. And if you want to be here for every breakdown, every investigation, every character this franchise never quite gave their due, you know what to do. I will see you in the next one.